Welcome to the My Raggedy Herbs podcast. This podcast is for truth seekers, homesteaders, homemakers, and medicine makers who are eager to roll up their sleeves and learn how to make their relationship with God, their family, and their home their first priority. Now here's Lori Coates.
Freedom is a precious thing. Have you ever thought about this? How free are you if you don't have the ability to provide food for yourself? We discover very quickly that we are not so free when we're hungry and we can't provide food for ourselves. We don't know where our food comes from, and we don't know how to grow it. When we are dependent on others to meet one of our most basic needs, then we are no longer truly free. Food availability and security are big issues, and certainly ones that move to the forefront during a time of crisis. Back in the 1950s, family gardens were common. Dining room tables were used for eating meals, and there was no such thing as high fructose corn syrup. Even though the microwave oven was invented in 1946, it didn't make its way into the average American household until the early 70s, so before that were the days of the real slow food movement. It was a badge of honor for a homemaker to have a well-stocked pantry, unlike today, where grocery stores have commonly replaced the home pantry, and most people only keep about 2 weeks' worth of food on hand. Cooking was a real thing, and people used cookbooks or called a relative instead of Pinterest to find their favorite recipes. Food was homegrown, preserved, and stored. These skills were important and were honed to perfection and then passed down to the next generation. There weren't big box stores on every corner, so actually knowing how to grow food, preserve it, store it, and then cook it was a necessity and often determined survival. During the COVID-19 pandemic, I've read that seeds are the new toilet paper. As people realized that they were going to be quarantined in their homes, the food supply was cleared from the grocery store shelves almost overnight. It didn't take long to see that there might not be enough to go around, and if the crisis prolonged, it could turn into a serious problem for those who enjoy eating. The old-fashioned idea of growing a vegetable garden suddenly didn't seem so primitive, and many vegetable seed warehouses sold out in record time. I've always heard that the worst time to prepare for a crisis is during the crisis. If I weren't a gardener, then I think I would go with there's no better time than the present to learn. Isn't it interesting that in the very beginning, God Himself planted a garden? Genesis 2:8 says, "And the Lord God planted a garden toward the east in Eden, and there He placed the man whom He had formed." In Genesis 2:15, we read that the Lord God took man and put him in the Garden of Eden to cultivate it and to keep it. Not just to look at it and piddle around in it, but man was to cultivate it and work hard to keep it producing. Man was to be a good steward over God's garden. God took man, His most precious creation, and placed him in a garden. And before He ever even gave him a companion, He gave him a job. Man was to be a gardener. While we are living in these unprecedented times, let me encourage you to plant a garden. Plant something edible, anything. You can grow a traditional row garden or use raised beds or containers to make the most out of your patio or balcony. Be creative and use whatever space you have. Ask God to help you as you reclaim a bit of your freedom by growing some of your own food. If God thought that it was a good idea to be a gardener, then in the garden is where I want to be.
The gardening information presented in this podcast is based on USDA Plant Hardiness Zone 7 for Central Oklahoma. Nothing in this podcast or on our website should be construed as medical advice. Consult your healthcare provider for your individual nutritional and medical needs. The information presented is based on our own research and is strictly that of the author and not necessarily those of any professional group or entity. For more information, please visit myraggedyherbs.com.